The strange part isn't that people are looking at you. It's that they stop talking the moment you walk into the room. They stare for a second longer than they used to. They smile in ways they never smiled before. Some seem inspired by you. Others seem uncomfortable without knowing why. A few can't even explain the feeling they get when you're near. And if you've been wondering why the energy around you feels so different lately, it's because something has already begun to change inside you long before you noticed it yourself, and the people around you sense it before you ever did. You thought nothing had changed. You still wake up in the same bed. You still follow familiar routines. You still carry responsibilities that sometimes feel heavier than your own heart. Yet something invisible has shifted. It isn't your clothes. It isn't your voice. It isn't even your appearance. It's something deeper. Something impossible to fake. Your spirit has started speaking without using words, and everyone around you has been listening even if they don't understand what they're hearing, and that silent message is only becoming louder. You may remember a season when you questioned everything. Nights when you wondered if your prayers disappeared into silence. Days when disappointment followed disappointment until you almost accepted that life would never change. You carried invisible battles that no one applauded. You smiled while hiding exhaustion. You encouraged others while quietly wondering who would encourage you. Those moments weren't wasted. They were preparing something within you that no human eye could fully recognize. Until now, the transformation didn't happen all at once. It arrived quietly, almost like the first light before sunrise. You became slower to react to negativity. You stopped chasing approval from people who never intended to understand you. You found yourself protecting your peace instead of defending your reputation. At first, you thought you were simply growing older. But this wasn't age. It was awakening. And awakening always makes familiar people feel unfamiliar toward you. Because they can sense something they cannot explain. Have you noticed how certain conversations no longer interest you? The gossip that once filled empty moments suddenly feels exhausting. The arguments that once demanded your attention now seem too small to steal your peace. It's almost as if your soul has changed its appetite. You no longer crave constant noise. You crave truth. You crave purpose. You crave something eternal. And that quiet hunger has begun changing everything around you, though the biggest surprise is still waiting. Some people secretly admire your calmness. They wish they knew how you stopped carrying the weight that once bent your shoulders. They don't realize you didn't become stronger because life became easier. You became stronger because you survived the storms that were meant to destroy you. Every disappointment taught your heart a language that comfort could never teach. Every delay shaped your patience. Every unanswered prayer built a deeper trust. Now those invisible lessons shine through your presence. Even before you speak, others, however, feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you've become arrogant. Not because you've pushed them away. They feel uncomfortable because your peace quietly exposes the chaos they've been hiding inside themselves. Your light isn't attacking them. It's revealing what they've tried to ignore. And people often mistake conviction for discomfort. They may not understand why your silence suddenly feels louder than their opinions. But neither do they understand what is coming next. There is a reason your heart has been pulling away from certain places. A reason familiar environments suddenly feel too small for your spirit. A reason old habits no longer satisfy you. Growth always creates distance between who you were and who you're becoming. That distance can feel lonely. It can even make you wonder whether you've lost yourself. But what feels like loss is often the first sign of becoming exactly who you were meant to be. Even if the road ahead remains hidden, you have probably noticed strange moments recently. Random encouragement arriving at the exact time you needed it. Unexpected opportunities appearing after closed doors. Conversations that seemed ordinary but somehow answered questions you never spoke aloud. Coincidences that felt too perfectly timed to be accidents. Perhaps you've dismissed them as luck. But deep inside, you know they feel different. They carry a quiet certainty that refuses to disappear, and that certainty is trying to lead you somewhere. The people closest to you may not know how to explain what's happening. They simply know you don't react the way you used to. The situations that once stole your sleep now barely shake your confidence. The criticism that once wounded your heart now passes like wine through open fields. You have discovered something many spend a lifetime searching for, the freedom that comes when your identity is no longer controlled by other people's opinions. That freedom changes more than your emotions, it changes your entire presence. Yet this transformation has not come without cost. You have lost people you thought would always remain. You have watched certain relationships quietly fade without dramatic endings. You questioned whether the distance was your fault. You wondered whether becoming healthier somehow made you harder to love. But not everyone is meant to walk with the version of you that exists today. Some people only knew the person who needed rescuing. They don't know what to do with someone who has finally learned how to stand, and that's where the mystery deepens. There were moments when you almost returned to your old patterns simply because they were familiar. Familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. You nearly apologized for boundaries that protected your peace. You almost accepted less than you deserved simply because loneliness whispered convincing lies. But something inside refused to let you settle. Something stronger kept pulling you forward even when your mind begged you to look back, and that unseen force hasn't finished guiding you. You are beginning to understand that healing isn't forgetting what happened. Healing is remembering without allowing the past to control your future. The memories still exist. The scars remain. But they no longer define your direction. Instead, they remind you how far you've already traveled. Every scar has become proof that pain didn't write your ending. It only introduced the beginning of a story far greater than anyone imagined, including you. People wonder why your eyes seem different now. They aren't brighter because life suddenly became perfect. They're brighter because hope survived where despair expected victory. Your smile carries a depth that wasn't there before because it has learned to exist alongside struggle instead of waiting for struggle to disappear. This quiet confidence cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It can only be earned through the invisible battles no one applauds, and those battles are becoming your greatest testimony. Still, there are nights when doubt tries to return. It whispers that nothing has really changed. It tells you that you're imagining your growth. It reminds you of every mistake you've ever made. But then another voice rises within you. Softer. Calmer. Stronger. It reminds you that you are no longer the person who first entered those battles. You walked through fire, yet somehow emerged carrying light instead of ashes, and that miracle continues unfolding. You may not realize how many people are quietly watching your journey. Someone who never speaks is drawing courage from your resilience. Someone who appears stronger than everyone else secretly finds hope in your endurance. Your story has become a lighthouse without your permission. You never intended to inspire anyone. You were simply trying to survive. Yet survival often becomes the very testimony someone else desperately needs, though they have yet to reveal themselves. And then something unexpected begins happening. Opportunities appear from directions you never considered. Doors open without force. Conversations unfold naturally. People who once ignored your value suddenly recognize it. At first, it feels confusing. Why now? Why after all the waiting? Why after all the tears? Because timing has always been part of the transformation. If everything had arrived earlier, you would have lacked the wisdom to protect it. But now you carry discernment that success alone could never teach. And that wisdom is about to be tested. Not every new opportunity belongs in your future. Some blessings arrive wearing the disguise of distractions. Some doors open only to see whether you'll walk away from your true purpose. Discernment becomes more valuable than excitement. You begin learning that not everything good is meant for you. Some things are simply preparing you for something greater. And the choices you make during this season will shape more than the next few months. They may shape the rest of your life. Then comes a moment you never expected. Someone from your past notices the difference before you say a single word. Their expression changes. Their confidence shifts. They search your face for the version of you they once knew, but that person no longer lives there. They cannot understand why your peace feels untouchable now. They cannot explain why your presence unsettles old patterns. And as they quietly wonder what changed about you recently, you finally begin to wonder something even bigger. What if this transformation was never just about you? What if every disappointment, every delay, every unanswered question, every lonely night, every hidden tear, every impossible season was preparing you for a moment that hasn't happened yet? What if the change everyone notices is only the beginning of something far more extraordinary? Because deep inside your heart, A quiet certainty begins to rise, stronger than fear, louder than doubt, impossible to ignore. And just as you begin to understand why everyone around you has been wondering what changed, you notice one final sign waiting exactly where you least expected it, and the meaning behind that sign is about to change everything. The moment you notice it, time seems to slow down. Nothing dramatic happens on the outside. No thunder rolls across the sky. No voice echoes through the air. The world continues moving exactly as it did a moment ago. Cars pass. People laugh. Phones ring. Life appears ordinary. Yet inside you, something becomes impossible to ignore. It feels like standing at the edge of a doorway you didn't know existed. Realizing you've already taken the first step through it, and suddenly you begin asking questions you never dared to ask before. Why does peace find you in places that once filled you with anxiety? Why do answers arrive before panic has the chance to take control? Why do the same situations that once left you feeling powerless now seem strangely small? The change isn't outside of you. It never was. The change has always been growing quietly beneath the surface, like roots spreading deep before a tree ever reaches toward the sky. And now those roots are holding you steady while everything around you keeps shifting, but someone else has started noticing those roots too. There is a person who has been watching from a distance. You don't know it yet, they've noticed how you carry yourself differently. They've watched you choose kindness when anger would have been easier. They've seen you walk away from arguments you could have won. They expected you to break after everything you've been through. Instead, you became calmer, stronger, more patient. They can't explain it, but every time they see you now, they're reminded that people really can change, and that realization is beginning to change them as well. Meanwhile, another person is struggling with something completely different. They remember the version of you that doubted yourself, the version that apologized for taking up space, the version that needed constant reassurance. They were comfortable with that person because they understood how to control them. But now, every conversation feels unfamiliar. You don't argue to prove your worth anymore. You don't chase after people who choose distance. You don't beg for understanding. You simply remain at peace. And your peace has become the one thing they don't know how to respond to, which leaves them asking a question they never expected to ask. What happened to you? If only they knew. If only they had seen the nights when your heart nearly gave up. If only they had witnessed the silent prayers whispered into the darkness when no one else was listening. If only they understood that your greatest victories happened in moments nobody celebrated. Transformation rarely announces itself. It grows quietly in hidden places. It forms while tears fall. It strengthens while hope feels fragile. By the time everyone else notices, the hardest part of the journey is already behind you, but the greatest chapter is still ahead. You begin remembering moments that once made no sense, the opportunity you lost, the relationship that ended, the door that closed without explanation, the dream that seemed to disappear. For so long, you believed those moments were evidence that life had forgotten you. But now you're seeing them differently. What felt like rejection was often protection. What felt like delay was preparation. What looked like failure became direction. Every closed door quietly redirected your steps toward something your eyes couldn't yet see, and now those invisible paths are beginning to connect. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces fit together. The heartbreak taught you compassion. The waiting taught you patience. The loneliness taught you how to hear your own soul instead of the noise around you. The uncertainty taught you trust. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. Even your deepest disappointments carried hidden lessons wrapped inside them, waiting for the exact season when your heart would finally be ready to understand. And that season has arrived. This explains why people feel different around you now. Some smile because your presence gives them hope. Others become distant because your growth reminds them of changes they've been avoiding. A few unexpectedly open their hearts to you because they somehow sense you're safe. Without realizing it, you've become a place where broken people feel seen. Not because you have every answer. Not because your life is perfect. But because you've learned the language of grace through your own struggles. Pain gave you an understanding comfort never could, and someone desperately needs that understanding sooner than you realize. Then life surprises you again. One ordinary day becomes unforgettable. Nothing about the morning hints that it's different. The sun rises as always. Your routine feels familiar. Everything appears completely normal, yet beneath the surface, invisible pieces are moving into position. Conversations you didn't plan are about to happen. Encounters you never expected are waiting just around the corner. A decision made by someone you've never met is already creating a path that will eventually cross yours. You can't see any of it yet, but destiny often works in silence before it reveals itself. As the hours pass, an unexplainable feeling follows you. You can't describe it. It isn't fear. It isn't excitement, it's expectation, the quiet certainty that something meaningful is approaching, not because you've seen proof, not because someone made a promise, but because your spirit recognizes patterns your mind hasn't discovered yet. And when your spirit begins recognizing what your eyes cannot see, life is often preparing its greatest surprises. Then comes the encounter. At first, it seems completely ordinary, a brief conversation, a passing smile, a simple exchange of words. Nothing about it appears extraordinary, but long after it's over, you can't stop thinking about it, neither can the other person. Something about that moment feels strangely familiar, as if two separate stories have quietly been moving toward the same page for years without either one knowing it. You don't understand why your heart suddenly feels so awake. And that's exactly what makes the mystery impossible to ignore. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. Your mind keeps replaying recent events, the strange peace, the unexpected opportunities, the people noticing your change, the growing sense that your life is entering unfamiliar territory. Piece by piece, a realization begins forming. You haven't just changed, you've been prepared. Every difficult season was shaping your character, every delay was strengthening your faith, every disappointment was teaching discernment, every lonely road was creating space for something greater to enter your life, and perhaps, just perhaps, Everything is happening now because you're finally ready to carry what once would have overwhelmed you. The thought sends a quiet shiver through your heart, not out of fear, out of hope, real hope, the kind that survives unanswered questions, the kind that grows stronger during waiting, the kind that whispers, "Keep going," even when tomorrow remains hidden. You smile without fully understanding why. For the first time in a long while, you don't need every answer. You don't need to know every detail. You don't need to force every outcome. Because somewhere deep inside, you've discovered a peace that doesn't depend on certainty, and that's when you notice one final detail. It's small, almost impossible to overlook. Someone you've never spoken to before looks directly at you with an expression that isn't curiosity. It is recognition, as if they've been expecting to meet you, as if your story somehow crossed theirs long before this moment. They hesitate, take one careful step forward, open their mouth to speak, then say 5 words that make your heart stop. "I've been looking for you." For a brief moment, the world seems to disappear. The sounds around you fade into the distance. Conversations become muffled. The rush of people moving past no longer matters. Your heart begins beating a little faster, not because you're afraid, but because something inside you recognizes that this moment carries more weight than it first appears. You search the stranger's face, hoping to find an explanation. Instead, you find calm, not the calm of someone who has all the answers, but the calm of someone who has waited a long time for this exact meeting. They smile gently, not with excitement, with certainty, and somehow, that certainty unsettles every question you've been carrying. You almost ask, "Who are you?" But before the words leave your mouth, they quietly say something that makes you freeze. "I don't think this meeting is an accident." Your mind immediately searches for logic. Have you met before? Do they know someone you know? Is this a misunderstanding? Yet every explanation your mind creates falls apart the moment you look into their eyes again. There is no confusion there. Only quiet confidence, as though they've been expecting this conversation long before you ever imagined it could happen, and suddenly you begin wondering what they know that you don't. They don't rush, they don't overwhelm you. Instead, they tell you something simple. "For weeks, I kept feeling like I was supposed to meet someone. I didn't know who. I didn't know where. I only knew that when the time came, I would recognize them." You don't answer, because part of you wants to dismiss it, another part remembers every strange feeling you've had recently.